The wind cut through Washington, D.C., like a knife on the morning of December 26, 2025. It was supposed to be a peaceful holiday, the day after Christmas. At Howard University, the campus was quiet. Students were resting in their dorms, some still in their pajamas, holding cups of hot cocoa. They were calling their moms back home in Nigeria, Jamaica, and India, whispering "I love you" and talking about their grades. They felt safe. They felt at home. But suddenly, the ground seemed to shake. It wasn't an earthquake. It was something much scarier. A massive, stark white bus turned the corner onto the main driveway. It didn't look like a school bus. It looked like a prison on wheels. On the side, 3 terrifying letters were painted in bold: ICE. The engines roared like a monster waking up. Silence turned into screams. This was Director Tom Homan's Operation Secure Borders coming to life, right on the doorstep of a historic Black university. These students weren't criminals. They were future doctors, engineers, and lawyers. Young kids just trying to learn. Panic spread like wildfire. Doors slammed. Tears began to fall. Miles away, a phone rang. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett picked up. She heard the terror on the other line. She didn't ask questions. She grabbed her coat. She knew the fight of her life was about to start. Jasmine drove faster than she ever had before. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Her heart wasn't beating for herself. It was beating for the students she swore to protect. She knew Howard University wasn't just a school, it was a holy place for Black history. And now, it was a target. Back on campus, the nightmare was getting worse. The bus doors hissed open. Heavy boots hit the pavement with a thud, thud, thud. Men in dark uniforms and scary masks marched out. They didn't look like they were there to talk. They looked like they were there to take. Up in the dorm rooms, students were hiding. A young engineering student from Nigeria dropped his phone. His mother still on the line, asking, "Hello? My son, are you there?" He couldn't answer. He was too scared to breathe. A medical student from Haiti squeezed her eyes shut, clutching her textbooks like a shield. They had done everything right. They studied hard. They paid their fees. But because of a few paperwork delays caused by the new administration, their dreams were about to be crushed. Director Homan's order was clear: zero tolerance. To the agents, these kids were just numbers on a list. But to Jasmine, who was pulling up to the curb right that second, they were family. And nobody messes with family. Jasmine's car screeched to a halt, cutting through the heavy air of dread. She didn't wait for backup. She didn't check her reflection. She slammed her door, the sound echoing like a gunshot. The scene before her shattered her heart. Young students, shivering in the December chill, were being herded like cattle toward the open doors of the bus. Their heads were bowed in shame, tears freezing on their cheeks. These were kids who just wanted to make their parents proud. An agent barked an order, grabbing the arm of a terrified girl who was sobbing into her scarf. Jasmine saw red. She marched toward them, the click-clack of her heels the only sound of resistance. The ice bus was massive, a steel beast puffing gray smoke, ready to swallow these bright futures whole. The driver revved the engine loud, warning growl meant to scare anyone away. But Jasmine walked straight into the danger. She stepped off the curb and planted herself directly in the middle of the road, inches from the massive chrome bumper. She looked small against the machine, but her presence was giant. She crossed her arms, locked eyes with the driver through the windshield, and froze. The bus lurched forward just a bit. She didn't flinch. She was the only thing standing between those kids and the destruction of their dreams. The bus driver hit the horn. It was a long, deafening blast that made the students cover their ears and scream. The massive grille of the bus vibrated just inches from Jasmine's coat. The heat from the engine washed over her face, but she felt cold as ice. An ICE agent, a tall man in heavy tactical gear, stormed over to her. He was angry. He was used to people running away from him, not standing in his way. He got right in her face, pointing a finger at her chest. "Mom, you are obstructing a federal operation," he shouted, his voice booming. "Move aside right now, or we will remove you by force." Jasmine didn't flinch. She didn't step back. She didn't look at his finger. She looked him right in the eye, calm and steady. The campus went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop to listen. "I am a United States Congresswoman," she said, her voice clear and shaking with controlled rage. "And these are human beings." She pointed at the bus behind her without turning her head. "If you want to move this bus, you are going to have to run me over." The agent froze. The students gasped. Tears streamed down their faces as they watched her put her life on the line for them. She wasn't moving. She was ready to die right there if it meant saving them. The agent blinked. He didn't expect that. He lowered his hand and stepped back, grabbing his radio to call his bosses in panic. He whispered into it, staring at Jasmine like she was a ghost. Jasmine stood like a statue, her coat flapping in the freezing wind. But behind her, something amazing started to happen. The students, who had been paralyzed by fear just moments ago, slowly reached into their pockets. Shaking hands pulled out phones. One by one, cameras turned on. "She's saving us," a student whispered into a livestream, tears dripping onto her screen. "Congresswoman Crockett is stopping the bus." In seconds, the video hit the internet. It exploded. On TikTok, Instagram, and X, the image of a lone black woman standing against a massive government bus went viral. Millions of people stopped scrolling. They saw the fear in the students' faces and the bravery in Jasmine's stance. In Dallas, families cheered. In St. Louis, people prayed. But on that cold street, time moved slowly. The engine of the bus kept rumbling, blowing toxic exhaust into Jasmine's face. Her feet began to ache. The cold seeped through her boots, making her toes numb. But then she looked up at the bus window. A young girl pressed her palm against the glass, sobbing silently, mouthing the words, "Thank you." Jasmine's heart broke, but her legs didn't move an inch. 10 minutes passed, then 20. To the world watching on screens, it was a heroic pause. But to Jasmine, standing on that freezing asphalt, it was agonizing. The cold was no longer just a chill. It was a physical weight, crushing her shoulders. Her legs, tired from years of walking the halls of Congress fighting for justice, began to tremble. But she locked her knees. She thought about her days as a public defender in Texas. She remembered the faces of mothers screaming as they were torn from their babies in courtrooms. She couldn't save them all back then. But today, she wouldn't let go. The lead agent, his face red with frustration, paced back and forth. He was on the radio again, shouting about insurrection and obstruction. He marched back to Jasmine, leaning in so close she could smell the coffee on his breath. "Director Homan is watching this lie," he hissed, his hand resting on his holster. "He says to clear the road. Last warning, we will put you in cuffs." The threat hung in the air like poison. The students behind her held their breath, terrified their hero was about to be dragged away. Jasmine didn't blink. She thought of the civil rights giants who had sat in diners and marched on bridges. They didn't move for dogs or fire hoses. She wouldn't move for a bus. "Call him," she whispered, her voice steel. "Tell him I'm not moving." 30 minutes. 35. The standoff was reaching a breaking point. The bus driver revved the engine aggressively again, lurching the massive vehicle forward another inch. The metal bumper actually touched Jasmine's coat now. She could feel the vibration in her bones. She closed her eyes for a split second, praying for strength, her breath visible in the freezing air. The agent unclipped handcuffs from his belt, the metal clinking ominously. "That's it," he growled, stepping forward to grab her. A collective scream rose from the students. They surged forward, ready to protect her, but Jasmine raised a hand. "Stop." She wouldn't let them get hurt. Just as the agent reached for her arm, sirens wailed in the distance. Not police sirens, legal ones. A fleet of cars screeched onto the scene, doors flying open before they even stopped. Out poured lawyers from the Howard Law School Clinic and the ACLU, waving papers in the air like swords. "Injunction." One of them shouted, sprinting toward the bus, breathless. "We have a federal injunction. You cannot move these students." They had been watching the livestream. They had raced against time, drafting legal challenges, while Jasmine bought them every precious second with her body. The lawyer slammed the paperwork against the bus window for the agent to see. The agent froze, the handcuffs dangling from his finger. He looked at the papers, then at Jasmine, then at the bus. The law had arrived just in time to back up the legend. The agent snatched the papers from the lawyer's hand. His eyes scanned the legal text furiously. He knew what it meant. A federal judge had seen the chaos, seen the violation of due process, and signed an emergency order to halt the deportations pending a full hearing. The zero-tolerance policy had just hit a wall named Jasmine Crockett. The agent's face turned pale. He keyed his radio one last time. "Stand down," he muttered, defeated. "We're aborting." Slowly, agonizingly, the bus gears shifted into reverse. The relentless beep, beep, beep of the backing vehicle was the sweetest sound the students had ever heard. The doors hissed open again to take them away, but to let them go. The students who had been forced onto the bus stumbled out, dazed and crying. They looked around, blinking in the daylight, hardly believing they were still on campus. They saw Jasmine standing there, still trembling from the cold and the adrenaline. She wasn't a politician in that moment. She was a savior. One student, the girl from Haiti, dropped her bags and ran. She didn't run away. She ran to Jasmine. She buried her face in Jasmine's coat, sobbing uncontrollably. "Thank you," she cried. "You saved my life." Jasmine hugged her back, tears finally spilling from her own eyes. The bus was gone. The white beast had retreated down Georgia Avenue, leaving behind a cloud of exhaust and a stunned silence that quickly turned into a roar. The fear that had gripped the campus melted into pure, raw emotion. Students swarmed around Jasmine, not as fans, but as survivors clinging to a lifeboat. They were crying deep, heaving sobs of relief that shook their bodies. Young men wiped tears with their sleeves. Young women held each other, rocking back and forth. It wasn't a celebration, it was a release of trauma. They had come so close to losing everything. Jasmine stood in the center of the huddle, her hands shaking as the adrenaline wore off. She looked into the tear-streaked faces of the students, future engineers, doctors, teachers. She touched the cheek of a young boy from Nigeria, who was still trembling. "You belong here," she whispered to him. "Don't you ever let them tell you otherwise." He nodded, unable to speak, just gripping her hand like it was a lifeline. The lawyers were busy taking statements, ensuring the injunction held, but the real work had been done on the pavement. Jasmine looked down at her shoes. They were scuffed and cold. She was exhausted, but as she looked up at the historic buildings of Howard University, she knew she had honored the ancestors. She had held the line. As the sun began to dip low over DC, casting long shadows across the campus, the magnitude of the moment settled in. Jasmine looked down at the tire marks on the pavement inches from where her feet had been. That image, her lone figure defying a machine of state power, was already flashing across screens worldwide, side by side with the 1989 photo of the man in Tiananmen Square. But this wasn't history. This was now. She turned to the students, her voice soft but fierce. "We bought you time," she told them, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You said, study, led, prove them wrong." She didn't promise it was over. She knew Homan would be back. But today, humanity won. She walked back to her car alone again, carrying the weight of thousands of lives on her shoulders. She wasn't just a congresswoman anymore. She was the shield. Narrator voice. This fight is far from over. The bus left, but the war for the soul of this nation continues. If Jasmine's bravery moved you to tears today, if you felt the fear and the relief of those students, do not let this moment fade in silence. We need you to stand up. Subscribe to this channel right now so we can keep bringing you the raw truth that others tried to hide. Hit that like button until it breaks to show the algorithm that compassion is stronger than cruelty. And most importantly, comment "I stand with Jasmine" below. Let's flood the comments section with thousands of messages so she knows that the next time she stands in front of a bus, she will never, ever be standing alone. We are watching. We are ready.